Oh, God. Oh, oh. Okay, let's get to work. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Today is going to be about which dungeons I end up using the most and why, as well as now that I'm kind of at the, I'd say, end game for sure, there is definitely some dungeons that are better based upon where you are on your account. So let's get into that and let's talk about that. Okay, so first and foremost, the thing we're going to have to tackle is the Dragon's Lair. This is because this is, without a doubt, the dungeon you're going to farm the most throughout your entire account. At no point in the game is there something in here that is not useful. For instance, speed is always useful. You will never be as fast as you want to be. You always try to get one more speed until you have it literally say max, which it can say max. I don't even know if you knew that, but if you max out a piece of gear, it will say max on the stat that you have it on the secondary. And if you look on my gear here, I don't have any max secondary stats on my Arbiter on any of them yet. No, 17 plus 3. For instance, this would have to roll, what is it? I think a 7's the highest it can get right on speed. So it'd have to go like 7, 14, 21, 28, and then the plus would have to be plus 8, because that is the very max you can get from the glyph. It would have to be 36 speed. If it's 6, it would actually only be, if it's 6 row, it would be 32. But it's either 32 or 36. See, I don't even know. You get my idea of what's the fastest piece of gear. And this is 20. So I'm one piece of gear. So there's a lot of room to grow, okay? So for that reason alone, Dragon is pretty much always going to be something you're going to farm, okay? But on top of it, lifesteal is really useful across the game in multiple ways. I've used lifesteal in Faction Wars to heal when I didn't have a healer. I've used lifesteal early on to continually heal my characters when I didn't have a healer in Clan Boss. I've used lifesteal to clear the campaign way back. If you want to talk way back when it's beginning usefulness, to clear the campaign even. On top of that, accuracy is still used. I use accuracy on people like, even my Royal Guards have some accuracy sets. I have people like Susie Catan, anyone that has like AoE debuffs really can use accuracy sets a lot. If I had the Dracomorph, I'd probably have some accuracy sets on him. Then Destroy isn't really used, to be honest. Oh, that's my alarm telling me I got an appointment here soon. Then there's Toxic, Frost, Daze. These are kind of a Frost maybe. Toxic sometimes used in the unkillable comps, and you got Vengine not really used. And Stalwart. Now, Stalwart's definitely used either in... I've used some in Clan Boss before to like counter the AoEs. I don't know if it's mathematically the best piece of gear, but I have used Stalwart also in Arena to counter AoE teams like Skull Crown, Ray, things like that. So Dragon definitely has its use. Dragon's probably the one I farm the most, and I'm continuing to farm when I go overnight, when I'm really trying to get the most value I possibly can. It's Dragon, because Dragon has the highest chance of all these pieces of gear to give me something useful. Now, unfortunately, I've done what I would consider about 300 runs of Dragon, and I only got 2 pieces of gear that I would consider usable, and then once I rolled them, they weren't usable at all. So it was 0 out of 300 lately within the last couple of days. Dragon, when you get to the end game, it can be really hard to min-max. Now, if we move on to things like Fire Knight, actually, this is kind of the opposite, where it's not that hard to get pieces that are good, because it's harder to get your hands on these. In my personal opinion, Fire Knight's one of the harder dungeons. Things like crit damage, savage, even stun sets, even immunity. These are some more high tier in-game type of sets where crit damage is going to massively increase your dungeon runs and things like Fire Knight, Spider. Like if I show you here real quick, I have some pretty good crit damage gear on my Spider team. So if I show you the way I run the Spider, if I hadn't been farming Fire Knight for these 3 Royal Guards, I purely just would not be able to do this type of team here with the crit damage, because I'm doing it without a code heart. So I have to nuke him right down. You see here, 1, and then he attacks the bad L here. And then the other guy goes off. There it is. And now the third and final hit here from the Royal Guard. And the hits are huge, basically just about 2 million a pop. And if I didn't have that crit damage on them, I wouldn't be able to do it this way. I would have to have some different type of team, but this is the most consistent, best team I can do, and that's because of the crit damage. Crit damage is hugely important, but immunity is massively important in Arena. And Arena now is, speaking of gear sets, is giving us those best gear sets of deflection and unkillable. You really are going to want to try to get immunity as well, because with Torment, heck, even even like the attacking characters, what's the word here? The one I'm forgetting, like Rey. Okay, even people like Rey can freeze, who also do damage. Right? I don't know why I'm forgetting the name Rey. I have two of her, but people like that also can be kind of used with immunity sets, right? I mean, granted, she can try to remove the buffs, which can be unfortunate, but she has increased defense on her basic. So if it's like a Longbeard team with Skull Crown Rey and he's charging in and the Rey's going to do the defense down and the Skull Crown's going to attack you, you'll actually be immune to that. So immunity can have a variety of uses, not just blocking like Torment freezes and stuff, but it's mainly used for Arena. Now, it also might have some use with new clan bosses. We don't know. They could have some new like True Fears or something coming. It could be interesting. Now, Savage is something that's kind of more of an in-game piece of gear. When you get really high-tier damage on your characters with this Savage, and you have a good secondary crit damage set to go on top of it, and you have people that scale off max HP, Royal Guard, Cold Heart, Husk, people like that, Savage can be a really hard hitter. It mostly is going to hit higher against people that have high defense, right? Because it ignores defense. So if you're trying to penetrate through people with high defense, like Force Keep, for instance, that's really it's going to be used best. Now, also, Stun Set is an 18% chance to place stun. But an interesting thing about gear sets is they cannot be resisted. They're unresistible. So if that 18% procs, it will happen. However, a block debuff will still block it. So if they don't have block debuffs, but they have like 800 resistance, which would be like the same thing, they can't resist it. It's not possible. For that reason, Stun Set is very good in Arena, as well as Faction Wars, because it allows you to have a way of CCing. And it's used for people that basically, we'll put it this way. Basically, people that have AoEs on basic that you can like charge with Longbeard, or that you can make fast with a stun set, they really have a lot of use. I'll show you an example of one that I have. For instance, I have a stun set on my Torment. I'm just going to pick a random battle here. And I will show you where my Torment kind of comes in handy. So I'm going to boost. Hopefully not get frozen. Okay, we did get frozen, but it's not too bad. Let's see if we can steal the revive. There we go. Steal that, put block debuffs. Now watch, see if we can get basic attack. Okay, there's the stun, right? So if he had block debuffs, it wouldn't have happened, but he can't resist it. So there you go. It's pretty much that easy. So for that, I'm going to let this play out real quick so I don't waste it. So for that reason, in particular, Fire Knight is one of the ones I farm the most, because crit damage you constantly need. And trying to get 6-star legendary crit damage gear, that's like the super in-game. And man, that is hard to get, because if you can get 320% crit damage with 100% crit rate, you're balling on your character. I mean, that's heavy, heavy damage, and it's entirely possible. You just have to farm the gear. Now, that kind of leaves us with two other dungeons, one of which is kind of unique in the aspect of Spider, obviously. Spider is kind of its own. So before we get into that, we're going to talk about Ice Golem. Now, Ice Golem is some of what we call the real basic ones. It has life, offense, defense, resistance. It has, critical rate, really the basic ones that also have divine versions of them. For this reason, Ice Golem, I find myself farming the least, but there is an exception to that, which is Taunting Set. 30% chance to place a provoke. That's 12% more than the stun, and once again, it's unresistible. For that reason, taunting sets can be very good in Arena, as well as, PvE, Faction Wars, or places where you need it. Now, resistance isn't really something I've used yet, but if I had insane resistance gear, I would probably use a Mountain King or something, so he counterattacks all the time with the freezes in Arena. Critical rate is obviously used all over the place. I use this on my Royal Guards. I think I even have a critical rate set, like on my Rey, maybe even on my Zavia. Defense is really, really useful for people like Valkyrie or that scale off defense. A lot of characters, their damage scales with defense, so you can get both defensive and damage at the same time. For instance, if I show you, I believe one of my Valkyries is the best example of this here currently. If we go down, I think it's Valkyrie number 2, this one right here. Look at these sets here. So that you can get some really, really nice sets where you got 50% defense, but also crit rate as well. So she's going to hit hard on top of having the defense and decent speed, everything. This is actually a pretty good set overall with crit damage and speed with crit rate on the defense set. So people like her that scale, their moves scale off of defense. it can hit really, really, really hard. Okay, so now the last but not least one, because that really kind of wraps up Ice Golem. Well, there's one more. There's one more set I should talk about, which is Reflex. Reflex can be used to reduce random skill. This is best with people like Bad L, where they only have a basic plus one other move. One other move that's really good that you're trying to reduce. That's really where it ends there for Ice Golem. Now, Spider's Den is currently the tournament, and Spider's Den is going to have everything. And I say everything because it's the only place to get jewelry. If you want jewelry, amulets, rings, accessories, this is the only way. The only way to get them, the banners, all that, is through the Spider. For that reason, Spider is going to be something you're going to farm the most besides Dragon. You're going to farm a lot of Dragon, and you're going to farm a lot of Spider. Spider might, in fact, be the one you farm the most overall out of all of them, because it also has the highest selling price for stuff. So when you're selling these pieces of gear here, they're worth the most. Banners, necklaces, things like that are worth way more than just the basics, like the gloves, the boots, or whatever you get from the other dungeons. So on top of it being the only place where you get your accessories, it is in fact the best silver in the game as well, both in speed as per energy. So for that reason, Spider's where it's at. And in order to get Spider down to the point where you have these really fast, high tier clear rates, high tier teams, you are going to need, for a fact, crit damage. So I would recommend kind of working on and farming towards your Fire Knight. Now, I hope that this information, this kind of all-in-one sitting, was helpful for people. If this was helpful for you, if you're a newer player or you're somebody who's growing and developing your information, please do consider subscribing to my videos as I am putting out daily content and sometimes multiple times per day to try to help you out in this game. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here, boys. I love you all. Thank you very much for supporting me, and I'll see you on the next video.